नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि, धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि, संघं शरणं गच्छामि, द्वितीयंपि बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि, द्वितीयंपि धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि, द्वितीयंपि संघं शरणं गच्छामि, तृतीयंपि बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि, तृतीयंपि धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि, तृतीयंपि संघं शरणं गच्छामि। पाणातिपाता वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि, अदिन्नदाना वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि, कामेषु मिच्छाचारा वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि, मुसावादा वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि, सुरामेरयमज्जपमादठाना वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि, सर्वपापस्य अकरणं कुशलस्य उपसम्पदा, सचित्तपर्योदपणम् एतं बुद्धान् शासनं। साधु साधु साधु।
जय भीम, नमोबुद्धाय. मित्र हो, माहिती आणि तंत्रज्ञान हा आज मनुष्याचा एक अविभाज्य घटक बनलेला आहे. आपण सर्व जाणतायत, तंत्रज्ञान हे नेहमीच नाविन्यपूर्ण कल्पनांचे चालक राहिले आहे. म्हणूनच जगभरातील ग्राहकांकडून वित्त व्यवहार म्हणजेच आजचा जो विषय आहे तो फिनटेक म्हणजे फिनान्शियल टेक्नॉलॉजी. या फिनान्शियल टेक्नॉलॉजी करता आजचे जे प्रमुख वक्ते आहेत UK वरून आहेत, प्रतापजी तांबे, आणि त्यासोबत गेल्या वेळेस जो आपला कार्यक्रम झाला होता ब्लॉकचेन, त्याकरता आपल्याकडे गौरव समवंशी म्हणून आले होते. आजचा हा कार्यक्रम त्या निमित्तानं होत आहे. आजच्या या कार्यक्रमाला खऱ्या अर्थानं डॉक्टर हर्षदीप सर हे येणार होते, पण अतिशय त्यांना महत्वाच्या एका सभेला जावं लागलं, मिटिंगला जावं लागलं, त्यामुळे आज येऊ शकले नाहीत. तर आज या फिनटेक म्हणजे फिनान्शियल टेक्नॉलॉजी हा विषय घेऊन आज आपण आपल्या समोर येत आहोत. काल बऱ्याचशा आपल्या सगळ्या व्ह्युअरनी फार चांगला प्रतिसाद दिला होता कार्यक्रमाला. कालचा जो कार्यक्रम झाला होता इंडिपेंडन्स डेच्या निमित्तानं, त्या कार्यक्रमानिमित्त अतिशय चांगला उत्स्फूर्त प्रतिसाद मिळाला. आजच्याही कार्यक्रमामध्ये आपण सर्वजण मोठ्या संख्येने उपस्थित राहणार आहात असे मी अपेक्षा व्यक्त करतो. आणि आजच्या जो फिनान्शियल टेक्निकबद्दल थोडीशी मी थोडक्यात माहिती देईन अशी आपल्याला, की जगभरातील ग्राहकांकडून वित्त व्यवहार आणि अनुभव घेण्याचे प्रकार बदलत चाललेले आहेत. व्हॉट इज द फिनान्शियल टेक्नॉलॉजी? बेसिकली financial technology is used to describe the new tech that seeks to improve and automate the delivery, the use of financial services. At its core, fintech is utilized to help companies, business owners and consumers better manage their financial options or process operations and live by the utilizing specialized software and algorithms that are used on computers and definitely smartphone. When fintech emerged in the 21st centuries, the term was initially applied in the technology employed at the back-end systems of the established financial institution. फिनटेक के कोई अगर हम एग्जाम्पल देना चाहते हैं, जैसे कि कुछ प्रसिद्ध कंपनी है जैसे पर्सनल कैपिटल, लीडिंग क्लब, कॉइबेस और वेल्थफ्रंट फिन कंपनी की उदाहरण है जो पिछले एक दशक में उभरे हैं. वित्तीय अवधारणाओं पर नए मोड़ प्रदान करते हैं और उपभोक्ता और अपने वित्तीय परिणाम पर एक अधिक प्रभाव डालते हैं. मित्रांनो, आंतरराष्ट्रीय व्यापार विभागाच्या गतवर्षीच्या अहवालानुसार 2030 पर्यंत ही आकडेवारी दुप्पट होण्याची शक्यता आहे. आणि ह्याच करता आज जे प्रमुख आपले पाहुणे आहेत ते आपल्याला अतिशय डिटेलपणे ह्याबद्दल डिटेल माहिती देणार. मी टेक्निकल टीम सांगेल ह्या फिनटेक बद्दल जी काही 10 जे हे आहेत पीपीटी, मी तर पीपीटी दाखवून मी नंतर गौरवना मी याच्यामध्ये सहभागी करणार. प्लीज शो पीपीटी, प्लीज शो पीपीटी. येस, the 10 things consumers need to know about the fintech. Go to the first slide. Yes, fintech technology means financial technology. Revolution is a financial services. We'll have more choice to how you manage your money. Next, these 10 things आहेत त्या संबंधीची. Remittance transfers could become faster and cheaper. Number 4, your bank might not exist anymore. Next, the unbanked can more quickly become the banked. And 6th one is your financial advisor would be in your pocket. Next, it will be the harder to lose your wallet but easier to lose your privacy. You could be paying for your sandwich with Bitcoin and a robot could be looking after your savings. तर अशा पद्धतीचं ही ज्या फिनटेक बद्दलची माहिती घेण्यासाठी माझ्यासोबत मी गौरवना यांना विनंती करेन की ते स्क्रीनवरती यावे आणि ह्या कार्यक्रमाची पुढील सूत्र आपण घ्यावीत, ही नम्र विनंती. या गौरव. येस गौरव. या
for the present introduction. As well as I would like to thank our chief speaker, Mr. Pratap Tambe sir. So, as discussed, fintech has been on the forefront since it gained larger importance with the advent of the internet, and when it became possible to avail more and more financial services. And right now, what we might be witnessing is another big revolution with the advent of blockchain, which is what happens when you combine blockchain with financial technology. And I think there could be no other better person to speak about the intersections of blockchain and fintech than Mr. Pratap Tambe sir, because he has a vast experience in both of them. In fact, to just give you a brief overview, Pratap sir has done his graduation from IIT Bombay in 1992. After that, he did his graduation from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and over there, his MSc thesis was itself regarding finance. And you could see how an engineer slowly started developing more and more interests towards finance. Then, after later on, he moved to UK. Currently, he has over 25 years of experience in information technology sector and as well as finance. And he has worked with major companies like TCS and Capgemini. He is currently leading business and technology consulting engagements with the prime customers of TCS, primarily in banking, financial services, and insurance industries, which are located primarily in UK as well as Europe. And his main focus has been on how to drive blockchain-based ecosystem transformations. Pratap sir is also known throughout for his thought leadership in insurance, where he has worked in big data-based catastrophe modeling, cyber risk monitoring using enterprise AI technology, as well as working in digital identities. And over when it comes to digital identities and intersections of blockchain as well as AI, he has specially worked. I think he's in the process of publishing a paper which is specifically about how can you reduce modern slavery. What do we mean by modern slavery is unfair exploitation which happens of labor when they are not given their due wages and are made to work in simply unfair conditions. Can modern technology, state of the art technology, help in these traditional problems which seem to never end, which keep resurfacing again and again? So that is one of his research papers that he's in the process of publishing, and I think I would invite him to talk more on that aspect as well. He has also worked in blockchains in insurance as well, especially when it comes to personal insurance, commercial, health, and life. He has given multiple public talks on prestigious platforms and published multiple articles on these topics in leading journals, websites, and newspapers. Right now, he's also an executive in residence at the Brunel University School, Business School in London since last year in 2019. I personally know him primarily because we came in touch through Facebook, and later on we connected because he was guiding us regarding the implementations of blockchain technology and with some valuable insights. I had the chance of meeting him, the good fortune of meeting him in London 2 years ago, where he is primarily based out of, where he's primarily working. And right now, what you can expect from this talk is the importance of fintech services, the importance that they've always carried over the past few years, what could be the opportunities right now that we could see in fintech, as well as the upcoming trends that we need to be on the lookout for. And with that in mind, I would like to invite Mr. Pratap Tambe sir in order to take forth this.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav. I'm delighted to speak here. Can we have the slide deck, please? Hello. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I'm going to speak about opportunities in fintech. This slide deck is a bit verbose. The reason I have made it a bit verbose is because I would like you to have a look at it after this session as well. And you may not, you should not need too much of time from people like me if you have the slide deck. That is why it is a bit more detailed. Okay, can you move to the next slide? So I think I'm not going to spend time on this because this has already been expressed. Can we move to the next slide, please? One thing to say here, whatever views I'm expressing in this talk are purely my views. Which type you should pursue. What are the success criteria? And I will talk about a case study which I'm familiar with. So this is what I'm going to talk about. So firstly, what is fintech? Fintech is basically for finance and technology. So what is finance? Finance is a term for matters regarding the management, creation, and study of money and investments. So money is a means for exchanging goods and services, and it is necessary for any economy to work. If you don't have money, then you can only have barter systems, and which are very inefficient. And money was one of the most important inventions of humankind, and it enabled various types of transactions to become possible, and it helps economies thrive and prosper. But money is also a very strategic thing, because there are various ways in which money comes into being. One of it is that it can be made. You can have a particular unit of gold or something stamped with value that a particular unit of money has is ascribed to it. So that there are various aspects to this money, and this aspect of money is changing dramatically. And money as an institution has evolved a lot. So I would recommend to you the story of money by Niall Ferguson in this context. But money also is associated with investment, because money is important for economic transactions, trading, and there is one more aspect of money, that it becomes possible to invest, because you can borrow from the future and invest in current economic activity so that the gains could be divided. So that concept of investment also is a subsidiary concept of money. So finance is a term for study of money and investments, and finance impacts the whole economy. So if you wanted to develop India, you have to deal with all of these issues. And if we could spend hours together in this, but credit, the giving and taking of loans, liquidity. If you, for example, own a building, but you wanted some money against it, how does one get that money? So there are ways and means you can get that, and then liquidating assets and so on, and then risk management. So managing the risk of assets, that's another thing that finance does. And there is a relationship between savings and investments. In an economy, the number of people saving, the amount that people save, is directly related to the amount of investments that can be made to businesses. So if what people like you and me save in the economy is essentially channelized through the financial system to businesses who need that money for investing in production and distribution and so on, and productive activities, economic activities. So if there is a lot of saving, there can be a lot of investment. If there is less saving, there can be less investments, so on. And then, when you have all of this money, then all these institutions about capital markets, foreign exchange markets, government securities market, these come into place. And these are very important institutions. Capital markets, we are referring to the BSEs of the world. Foreign exchange markets, we are referring to the Reuters terminals and so on, which are used by people to trade foreign exchange and so on. And then government securities markets are these securities markets through which government borrows money from the market, through loans and so on. Now, these instruments are very important because they link what people like us do to the government. So through these mechanisms, essentially government controls the money supply in economies. So this is very important. So if government wants to squeeze the amount of money available in the economy, then they have instruments through which they do that. And if they want to increase the supply, they can do that as well through these mechanisms. And this is one of the core problems right now in the economy, and we'll talk about it later. And then, we talked about savings and investments, and that investment can go into infrastructure and growth. So you will notice overall that when a government wants to, many governments will launch some large capital outlay projects, because those generate employments and generate the possibility of more productive employment for people over time. And that is necessary for growing employment and economic growth. So you have to increase infrastructure, and that leads to growth. So that's, for that you need investments, and that comes from savings. Similarly, when you have savings, and when you have money money properly managed, then trade also improves, and trade benefits different parties. And if there is a good monetary system in place, then trade also improves. And in this whole process, all of these things influence employment. So what you can see clearly, that if you want to improve infrastructure in India, if you want to improve employment in India, if you want to improve trade that India does, then basically which are outcomes that matter to all of us, you need to manage finance better. And that is the whole point, that finance is, though it gets dealt with in those financial newspapers, the Economic Times and the Financial Times, and it seems to be arcane of art of its own, is related to day-to-day life. And this has been the real, it has till I think 2007 or so, the relationship between, for quite a part of our history, financial systems were very well linked to the economy. And what has happened over the last 15-20 years, and I can't go into too much detail about it, is that the financial markets and the linkage to the real economy has become weak. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about. Another important thing about about finance is that, to finance new ventures, that is, new ventures can be of different kinds. Some are more risky than others. You need different types of financing available to finance these ventures. And this venture capital comes in, and there are various ways in which you can raise money for venture capital, and there can be regulations for it, and so on. So the venture capital is another important mechanism. And the last one is also a very important thing: balancing economic growth. So there are various sectors in an economy, and how does one balance of the economic growth across the different sectors? So there is the hidden hand of that Adam Smith talked about, through which essentially the balancing mechanism works, and that happens through the mechanism, through the instrument of money. So finance has a key role in balancing growth of the economy. Can we move to the next slide? So now we spoke about finance. So what is financial technology? Financial technology basically is about technology and innovation that aims to compete with financial methods in delivery of financial services, with traditional methods in the delivery of financial services. So to do whatever financial services we are experienced in, how can they be delivered better, and how can more services be added through technology means? That is basically what financial services is. Now there are various layers in which this happens. So there is financial technology applicable effectively at the central banking level. And there was the gold standard for managing money in the past. Then we had the floating currency, and there are mechanisms for managing that. And there are SLR and CRR, statutory liquidity ratio, and cash reserve ratio. So these are mechanisms by which the government, the Reserve Bank controls the money available in the economy. And then the government securities and based monetary control. So whenever government wants to suck out money from the economy, they basically can borrow that money through a bond and so on. So there are various means that governments have to control the economy, and there are all some amount of technologies related to these that are there. Then there are all the banking, financial services, and insurance related finance operations and technologies. We are all familiar. Initially, banks used to be manual operation. Maybe some of you are too young and may not remember at all. But when I was a kid, these many banks were not really automated, and there was a lot of manual operations. Then there was back office automation, and then there was branch-wide automation, and then came bank-wide automation. So there is a lot of these banks getting automated. But what had been happening, after some time, what happened was, when the internet came about, then suddenly the banks were, whatever the banks were, there were a lot of they were not able to meet the needs of customers, and some banks became better at dealing with them and with customer needs, and we'll discuss that in detail. And that is the space in which financial technology and insurtech emerged. So what I'm saying is that financial technology has been around, but the what we normally call as fintech and insurtech is basically the new version of it, which is more consumer focused and more the last mile focused financial institutions. They are targeted at meeting needs of customers in the last mile. Let's go to the next slide, please. So why is it important? What has happened is that there is as I mentioned, when the internet came up, slowly what started happening is that there was a diversity of the value chains and customer needs. So there have always been lots of segments of customers, and the diversity of customers has increased as changes have happened in economies, demographics, and so on. And generally, the diversity of customer needs has increased, and then the value chains have increased. The diversity in the number of devices that people use is so high. The number of ways in which you can access your bank today are so different, and so on. So the whole economics of servicing your customers through different channels has become different. So the whole economics of the value chain has changed. So we previously used to have a one size fits all proposition. So there was very little differentiation in the offerings from different banks, and you chose one bank or other based on very different criteria. And then slowly things started diversifying. The diverse propositions started emerging. And also depends on how much of the channels you control. Internet, the channel internet is not fully controlled by the bank. There is a telco involved, there is an ISP involved, all of them are involved. And so most of the channels are not fully controlled. So there is the the challenge of level of control over the complete value chain. Then there is the prioritization between different value chain segments, and then diversity of value chain capability. So for example, what you can do through a TV-based app for banking versus a phone-based app for banking, and various other things. The things can be quite different. So the capabilities of different channels can be different. So slowly, because of the diversity, it became apparent that banks cannot themselves do everything, and things started fragmenting. So the fintechs typically emerge in the strategic space created by the changing economics of channels and customer needs. Now, when I talk about the channels and value chains, so firstly, you have to understand the concept of a value chain in the fintech BFSI industry. So suppose some financial transactions are happening and one party is paying somebody some money. So that money may be paid from different kinds of accounts, and the money that came into those accounts, that were they may have come in there through a loan, it may have come in there through a credit card, and so on. So the money, there are two types of money in the economy. There is money which is generated and controlled by the central bank, and there is money which is generated by the commercial bank, because banks can lend more money than they have deposits. This is one of the key mechanisms by which economies run. So banks have to keep a particular amount of money with the central bank, and they can lend a multiple of that. And so there are two mechanisms by which money gets created in economies. One is the money that is printed by the government. One is money that is created by the commercial bank. And so who created the money, who basically created and how is that linked to the central bank money? All of that is different for whatever penny or paisa that you spend. So there is a whole value chain or set of things behind that every paisa that is spent. And this is the whole point, that the value chain and the product, the sequence of people involved and the instruments involved in that final transaction which happens are very different. And there may be various that is what I mean by the strategic space, where and we can talk about some examples. So you can have new technology, old product versus old technology and old product. So if you, for example, you had ICICI Bank versus State Bank, State Bank of India. So, State Bank of India, you had a manual operation and manual products, the same products. And then suppose you had basically, phone banking, which provided essentially the same kind of products. So that is one scenario. Another scenario can be that you can have new products and new technologies. So, there are some kind of products which are available through a particular channel, which are not available through another channel. So those kind of scenarios, and when this starts happening, things start fragmenting in terms of product propositions. Then basically the value chain core element has been changing. So as I was telling you, every penny that you spend, every paisa that you spend, there is a whole value chain behind it. And finally, money is controlled by the government. And what is happening is that the government is, the ability of the government to influence the money supply and the spending and economic activity in the economy has decreased in the last 15-20 years. That is one of the core problems that the world economy today faces. So, so that is one of the things that needs to be solved. Let's move on. What I was talking about CBDC. Sorry, I didn't elaborate that word. It is central bank digital currency and open banking. So I am not too familiar with the open banking aspects in India, but globally, what is happening is that there are various kind of propositions that products and services being supplied to end customers and by fintechs. So there are lending companies, and there are various kind of agencies, agency propositions. So some company will essentially manage the relationship with the customer, and at the back end will be a traditional financial institutions. So that is what has been happening. And what was happening was that fintech players, who leveraged new technologies to build business propositions, business and technology platforms, managing the relationship with customer, giving them, the end customer has become used to a customer experience, which he gets with the Googles and Facebooks and Amazons of the world. And most of the banks are not able to provide that customer experience. So, the fintechs effectively have leveraged this opportunity and have built business propositions where they provide excellent customer experience, which customers prefer, and make it easy for customers to manage their affairs. And at the back end, they want to integrate with the traditional banks. So some have been able to do that, but sometimes what happens is that the banks do not support it, and so therefore there has been the open banking revolution, through which governments have enforced that banks have to provide these APIs to fintechs, through which they can leverage the services from the banks and provide enhanced customer experience to their end customers. So this is one of the things. But at the other end, that is happening, so there is this open banking pressure on the traditional financial institutions. On the other hand is the CBDC. Now, CBDC, central bank digital currency, you may have heard that India is considering launching a blockchain-based currency. China is way ahead, and various countries are considering the central bank digital currencies. We'll talk about as I was mentioning, they are aimed to increase the ability of government to influence economies and to monitor money laundering. The whole idea being that with technologies like blockchain, money becomes it becomes possible to track every penny even better. Today, even though due to Aadhaar, the government has a lot of ability to monitor the economy, the technological capability required and the scale required is very difficult. It is very difficult to track money in near real time and so on. So, but new technologies make it possible, and that's where that aspect comes in. Also, what is happening is that for the last many years, the per transaction cost for money transfers in economies has been relatively large. But with the new generation of technologies like cryptocurrencies, blockchain-based cryptocurrencies, it is now possible and expected that the cost, there are alternatives available which can do money transfers at lot less cost. So there is now a pressure to reduce that cost, and that is one of the drivers for that. Also, banking system tends to exclude a lot of people. To open a bank account, you need so much documents. That many people don't have those documents, and therefore they are not able to open those bank accounts, and therefore they are not able to participate in economic activity. And this is not good for the economy at all, and it is not fair. And so, government, which basically needs to be enabling people to participate in economic activity, is not fulfilling its duty, and that is one of the other drivers for central bank digital currencies. And then, of course, you know that cash can have corona risk. So therefore, people are trying to get away from cash and do more and more transactions digitally, and that's the other driver. So effectively, the banking system or the traditional financial institutions are under pressure from both sides. First is to open their doors to APIs so that the fintechs can do things themselves, and on the other side, depending on what type of CBDC, central bank digital currencies are launched, there is a risk that their role might decrease further. So can we move on? Yeah. So central bank digital currencies are of two kinds: wholesale CBDC and retail CBDC. So wholesale CBDC refers to a situation that's similar to the current situation, where various banks have accounts with the central bank, and they manage their own downward accounts. So like we will have accounts with banks, and banks will have accounts with central bank, and the bank's account with the central bank will be managed using blockchain, while our accounts with the bank will not be managed using blockchain. And retail CBDC is a situation where essentially the bank accounts that the bank runs will always be operating using blockchain technology, and you can hold money in wallets. And as Vijay sir was saying, that you can have you will never lose your money. So it is in control that you have. And here there is an interesting concept also being discussed, which is very similar to what Dr. Ambedkar had once talked about. He had talked about that there should be a national reinsurer, and that kind of discussion is also picking up, where there should be a national reinsurer. And while we have these kind of structures in India and other countries, but that it's not there in other countries. So that is also picking up as one of the changes that is happening. And then when we talk about fintechs, the fintechs which leverage all of this. So this is these are the various scenarios that whether there'll be a CBDC of this kind, whether there'll be a CBDC of that kind, whether that wholesale insurance will come into place, and all of that need to interact with whatever is happening in open banking, financial services, and insurance. So firstly, what I mean by that is, if you are launching a financial fintech, then you need to think whether you will become a principal. Long ago, 20 years ago, I thought about what is required in India to open a bank, and you need some 100, 200 crores to open a bank. So clearly, that is not a proposition, not a feasible proposition for most people on this call. Because if you had that much money, you would be doing something else with it than attending this. And the other thing is, so primarily what can be done is you can launch agency propositions, and then you can have propositions which are in the sales cycle, and there are various things that can be launched in the sales cycle, and you can have some things which are in the service cycle. So there are various phases in the whole value chain, and you have to decide whether you're a principal or an agent, and there are different regulations applicable to principals, and there are different when I may say principal, it means that you open a bank. When I say agent, you become a broker of the bank, you become a direct sales agent of a bank, or those kind of services. And then there are various services which are required in the sales cycle. For a life insurance policy, for example, you have to you need services of some medical checks and so on. And in the servicing cycle, there might be similar other services in health insurance. So those are the kind of services that can be there. And in mortgage, for example, there might be other services which are required. So you can launch your proposition anchored on some of these. So all depending on what proposition you are choosing up, and what you are, whether you're principal or agent, whether wholesale CBDC comes up, retail CBDC comes up, there are various scenarios to consider, and these are all the primary scenarios. Let's move on. move on. Yeah. So these are some of the scenarios that I was talking about, that there is no CBDC, closed BFSI value chain, wholesale CBDC, closed BFSI value chain, etc. So those are the various, yeah. So those are the various scenarios, and these are the things to consider. So moving on to, yeah, choosing type of fintech as value chains transform. So now let's think about, if you wanted to, this is the scenarios. Now depending on what kind of fintech should you launch, right? Now essentially what is happening, as I said, is as these changes happen in the economy, the value chain is transforming. So you need to gather domain knowledge, and based on that domain knowledge you need to design a business proposition. So what I mean by that is, you have to decide whether you want to do something in lending, and you have to learn lending if that is the case, or if you know lending, then you have to do lending. So you have to decide which business you want to be in. Then you need to do whether it's a principal or an agent proposition, or whether, and you have to learn various technology. You have to, you can have a business proposition which is where you own the end customer and you manage all the regulatory aspects and so on. And then you can have a technology proposition. So where somebody else runs the business company and you provide services to it, or you provide software products which they use. So these are the things to learn. If you want to launch a fintech, then you need to gather domain knowledge, and domain knowledge to design business propositions or technology proposition. You might think that domain knowledge is not required in technology propositions. That's not the case. I'll give an example towards the end if you want to launch some kind of technology proposition, you need to have domain knowledge. Then in terms of domain knowledge and technology skills are primary, and agency propositions are easier to start than principal business propositions, as I give an example with the bank. And I will put a link here which will give you some ideas towards what you can do for that. And technology propositions need to be heavy in IoT, AI, blockchain, and other emerging technologies, because these are the ways in which if you need to have skills in this, or you need to somehow find the skills, and there are people on this call who can provide those kind of skills. And TCS also provides such skills. Let's move on. Yeah. Now, when you are choosing, to choose the type of fintech that you are launching, you need to build a business plan around the fintech type based on your own knowledge, skills, and network, around the market opportunity, availability of good agency business opportunities, contact with relevant staff and principal BFSI players. See, notice here that I am discounting the principal ones, but if somebody has huge number of crores, then that is possibly an option. And then you have to check your own funding possibility, own funds, government funds, crowdfunding, venture capital, and so on. And there is a lot of white space in BFSI business propositions, as well as technology proposition targeting underprivileged communities. Now, as I was telling you, one of the key drivers for governments is the unbanked. This unbanked and the various underprivileged communities are not targeted properly. Bringing such communities into the economic value chain is a big business opportunity. If it can be, the challenge is to design a digital business model and platform and make it work. So that's the market opportunity that I would task this group to explore. And there's a lot of white space. White space means business opportunity. Please move on. Yeah, so this link that I have provided here, I have a few set of ideas that I had come up with in 2005 or maybe before that, about what kind of business models can be created for underprivileged communities. So you can anchor your business model in playing a role in the value chain for banking, financial services to underprivileged communities around India. What you have to do is you have to start with enabling underprivileged people to invest in their human capital and join the global value chain. Now, there are people, for example, who you can join. You can start recruitment agencies. You can start training agencies. You can start various types of such agencies, so that motivated people go through. You essentially process human capital, and deploy it in global human capital markets, and that's how you essentially make your first money. But what you do in the process is that you generate potential customers for your other services. And that is a business proposition that I can probably talk. I have a separate, me and my wife have been doing some work in that area. There are some ideas that we were exploring, and I have talked about this kind of topic at other forums as well. then start as intermediaries, brokers, agencies, partnering with incumbent traditional financial institutions. So there are a lot of our senior people whom you might know is in the communities and so on in such senior places, and you can you can build partnership with traditional financial institutions, and you can leverage the facilities available by the government to empower these communities, and that is how you can launch these propositions more easily. And what the main thing you have to do is that you have to think world class from day one, and you have to build a technology platform which will help you for the entire journey. And you have to think in an ecosystem manner, because if you don't think in ecosystem manner, then it's like saying that you should not only cook the meal and let somebody else eat it. You need to do some things that there will be, for example, if you have to provide services which will meet the needs of customers. You have to design your business proposition so that you own the customer for life, and you are providing something to that customer over the entire customer life cycle. And if you especially target the underprivileged communities in this manner, surrounding them with propositions that they can utilize at different stages of their life, then you won't go wrong. And that is something that will be a big social service, and there is a big business opportunity in this area. Unfortunately, I would have much liked to do that, but I guess I'm not in a position to do that. I have tried entrepreneurship twice in the life, and I did not succeed at it, and therefore, but I'm happy to guide anyone who is interested in this. Please go ahead. So strategies for fintech. How do you choose a fintech, and how does so you need to do a lot of formal and informal market research about target segments to identify the key business and technology propositions. And you need to launch digital business and technology proposition to target segments quickly and learn quickly. Basically, this is very important generally in business and all. If you want to launch this kind of business propositions, you need to, you can't spend years and years coming up with your business proposition, or you have to fail fast. Fail fast is the quickest way to learn. Because you have in entrepreneurship, I've been in startups, I've worked in startups where the business strategy changed in fortnight. Every fortnight there was a different business strategy. So things move very fast, and you have to adapt with that, and to find your business opportunity. Be ready to learn, and you have to be obviously constantly being mindful of your runway. So just like an aeroplane has to take up before the runway ends, you will have a finite runway, because none of us is fortunate enough to have very long runways. But within your runway, you have to be able to gather speed and take off. Yeah, let's move on. Success criteria. So now I spoke about underprivileged communities and business models. Underprivileged communities are not served well by current business models. So you may get some satisfaction by building feasible business model and whatever, but that personal satisfaction should not be your primary driver. That is very necessary. I know of a friend of mine who launched a business model in a training company, and who basically succeeded at it. But he was very successful at making people happy and helping people find jobs. But he did not make huge amount of money, and it was more stress and pain for him, and it was not very sustainable. So now slowly he has moved away from it. So this personal satisfaction is good, desirable, whatever, but it is not adequate. The sustainable financial success is a measure. It's a money and sustainable financial business model is a measure of how appropriate. That is the thing to aim for. You may get satisfied by helping a few people for a few days. It's like that story about catching fish and giving somebody fish to eat, and teaching somebody to catch fish. Only when you have done something sustainable, then basically and if your company is viable and you are able to operate it, and it is able to benefit a lot of people, and therefore you are able to sustain your company, then that is the important thing to focus on. So it is very necessary for you to focus on sustainable financial success and not on personal satisfaction. It is not okay to give people light by burning your own home. Let's move on. Another important thing, in doing all this, one of the important things is, at all points of time, there is a lot of technological capability available in India. So build a world-class technology platform which can support multiple business and technology propositions. And initially focus on speed to market and leverage components from others, but over time try to build own components where appropriate, because this reduces cost, and this technology platform it will help you pivot to new opportunities which are there. So this is all very necessary. That if today you are doing A, but day after tomorrow if you decide to do B, then your technology platform should be able to help you switch quickly, and that is very necessary. You have to think about these things, and most importantly, it is an asset that can be sold in case you run into trouble and you want to liquidate the company. So this can be an asset which will have value. So on. Then you need to pick a team which sticks together and has complementary skills. It is very necessary. This all this stuff is a team game, and there are various personal factors are key, and you need to have a diverse team. Yeah, let's move on. So I'm now at the end. I'm just going to talk about a case study. There is a friend of mine, Snehal Fulzele. Snehal Fulzele in 2005 graduated from 2004 or 2005 graduated from uh, VJTI, and he was, me and Prerna had gone there. Me and my wife Prerna, we had gone there as guests, and we had, given him some award and all. And then he went to the US and did his masters. And after that he launched a business and technology platform focused on microfinance. Again, notice he's worked on underprivileged, because it is easy to get funding for these kind of propositions. A lot of people, lot of Indian financial institutions, lot of multilateral financial institutions have a lot of money kept aside for funding business propositions targeting underprivileged communities. And therefore, it's a very good place to start. What you need to do, what you need to do is, target it with the best of the technologies, and make sure that you build something of value and then grow out of that segment. And that's what he seems to have done. And initially it was focused on microfinance, and then while pivoted away from microfinance into other types of finance over the next 5 years, and he sold the business for around 150 million in USD in 2018. This is all there on the internet, and Snehal Fulzele is somebody whom you should, I would suggest that Vijay and you guys should arrange a talk by him sometime. So that's basically, and this is an example of somebody who has done what I had talked about. And I would strongly, it was very much a fintech. It was more of a technology proposition fintech than a business proposition fintech. So he was building a technology platform which could be used by multiple people launching business propositions, and that is one of the models that I talked about. So there are those two primary models that you launch: business propositions where you are subject to a lot more regulations, and it's like there are various types of people who made money even during the California gold rush. There were people who actually found the gold, and there were a lot of people who made money by selling shovels. So you have to decide where you want to make your money, and there is money to be made in general in this area. So that's all from me, and now I'll be happy to take on questions. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next slide. In the PPT, I was just saying that there are my contact details are there in the slide deck. So it will be useful for all of you. Anyway, so over to you, question answers.
Yeah, thank you, Pratap sir,
Welcome.
for giving us such amazing information about pin technology. Definitely, for our guiding the people and having the talent they wish to showcase to us in the nearby future. Definitely. Before starting our open forum question and answer session, we'll take a 1 minute break, and then we'll start again questions answer session. Technical team, please show questions.
Pratap sir, there is one question that I think you can directly take. It's from a person who's working in from Diwali Power, working in the BFSI services, and also an XTCS employee. So she wants to ask that in this COVID pandemic, are there any current prospects or infrastructure project management that she can look for, and how can you extend your further guidance, especially in the BFSI domain?
Yeah.
So a big question.
Yeah. Infrastructure project management. So what is happening is increasingly people are moving to cloud. So over the last 5-6 years, in-premise infrastructure is moving to cloud. So as long as you have those cloud skills, and we are able to participate in DevOps. So DevOps is an area which is growing, and infrastructure project management, related to cloud, moving things to cloud and managing cloud infrastructure. Much of the management of cloud infrastructure tends to be relatively automated, but project management opportunities moving things to cloud. Yes, there are a good number of those, and then DevOps related activities, managing that and planning that. There certainly seem to be opportunities.
Yeah, next one is money is a laundering versus CBDC. Okay, we will take this question, Sandesh. Any opportunity of MBA sales and marketing professional in fintech and the blockchain technology platform? This is both of you. This question is for both of you.
Okay. Yeah. So let me go first, Gaurav. And so as I was telling you, there are these two kind of propositions. Either you launch a business proposition, in which case MBAs with sales and marketing are very necessary, because I talked about the need to do market research and identify the business needs, and of course there will be people who need to understand the regulatory constraints and so on. But identifying the market opportunity is really primary in that business proposition area. It is important in the technology propositions as well. So there are opportunities in such spaces, but and there are startups in these spaces where you can gain this experience. But especially about blockchain technology, it is at a stage of evolution where it is getting into prime time right now. It has been more in POC territory till now, and is slowly getting into prime time territory. So there will be more opportunities going forward.
Yes, and just to add to that, I would just say that if you are an MBA graduate in sales and marketing, you would need to have a bit of both. You would need to have a functional understanding of what are the promises of blockchain, just a functional level understanding which is easy to gain from books and online courses, as well as an understanding of the domain, because you will be acting at the intersection of both talking to the clients as well as interacting with your technical team. So whatever domain you choose, understanding the blockchain itself, the functions is necessary, and it's not at all difficult to do that. It's very easy.
Yeah, from MJ questions. Yeah. To Tambe sir, in 1992, Indian economy was open, and other after people around the world started investing in the government ventures companies. But now people are investing in the private companies, not government companies. As the people don't trust, which will be disinvested. What is your view?
This distrust and trust and distrust is of course favorite area. But you are right that if you invest money in a government company, and firstly the pricing of that government company in the stock market may not reflect the underlying value accurately because of various reasons, and secondly, when it is divested, it may not be divested at a very good price, and therefore so that's the problem you are referring to. But if you seem to indicate that this situation is better in the private market and in the stock exchanges and all. If you have a private company, which is marginally somewhat true, and the Indian market has become relatively efficient, but the private sector is not devoid of such problems. There are corporate governance issues in in the private sector as well. So, but I agree substantially. If you are looking to invest in such ventures, and anyway, worldwide the move is towards privatization. You might as well invest there first.
Yeah, Nitin, I got to suggest if you can brief on opportunity in the payment space like cross-border payment and IoT, etc.
Yeah. So the payment space is a very hot space in digital in basically fintech area. So the challenges in this come from the due diligence point. I was for example, a fintech in one country wants to transfer money to a fintech in another country. So either if that same fintech is available in multiple countries, there are a different set of solutions, and if that same fintech is not present in different countries, so depending on what country combinations you do, depending on what regulations there are there, everything that I explained today on the call is applicable. So you have to identify whether you want to be a business proposition in this space, or whether you want to have a technology proposition in this space. And if you have a business proposition, then you have to shape out the business proposition, define which countries you want to target. You have to look at the various regulations applicable among them. You have to identify your target market segments in terms of people transferring and in terms of people receiving. And you need to understand their user preferences. And based on that, you have to design your business proposition and get your technology constructed. So there are opportunities in this space, and there is a lot of competition in this space. But if you are targeting underprivileged communities, then I don't think there is anybody targeting on those right now. So there may be space here as well.
Yeah, this is a very good question from Mangesh TK. Money laundering versus CBDC strategy or norms.
So yes, absolutely. CBDC, central bank digital currency, is aimed at reducing money laundering, and the whole point being that depending on there are various approaches that can be used for money laundering, and some approaches are more can eliminate money laundering better than other approaches. Blockchain-based ones are particularly good at eliminating money laundering, and depending on but so that's the thing. Yeah. So money laundering and CBDC are really related if the right CBDC strategy is chosen.
Yeah, from Pramod, what is the future of social entrepreneurship? Any suggestion?
See, if you notice what my primary thesis on this presentation has been, the business value. I was talking about the business value of unleashing the value of human capital, which is not being brought into the global human capital markets, and that there is clearly a lot of opportunity there. So the social, whether you call it social entrepreneurship, there are various terms for this, but there is a lot of opportunity there, and uh, and that is, we need to go there. So there is a lot of opportunity there, and a lot of people are exploring it. I would recommend that to people here as well.
Yeah, next one from Mahesh Khaire. Which field is having more sustainable business opportunities? App-based, that is application processing interface solution, or the traditional banking software on latest technology?
See, depends on what you mean by sustainable business opportunities. There are more opportunities in my sense on app-based API solutions, because that is hardcore fintech territory. So identifying the gap and putting that app which encashes, which captures that gap, is really the thing. But you can have a point solution, and if you don't keep on innovating it, then you might lose that foothold so you have to land and expand. You have to find a small strategic space where you launch a business proposition which and then have to build around it, otherwise it might not be sustainable. So, but there is more opportunity in app-based API.
Yeah, this is the question for Gaurav. Is blockchain technology safe and authorized by RBI?
Okay, so what the RBI's official stance as per the 2007 regulation is that cryptocurrencies, they're put on hold. In fact, the IRS officers of the Delhi government are having continuous meetings where they are deciding whether to treat cryptocurrencies as cash or as an asset. Until that is resolved, they will not be legal cryptocurrencies. I mean, transactions directly day-to-day basis. For example, in Japan, you can buy ice cream using Bitcoin because they legalized Bitcoin in 2017 by passing a bill in the parliament. But in the same directive, just Google and search. RBI has clearly said that as a technology, blockchain has to be explored and delved into further. In fact, Pratap sir would also be able to add more on this, that the future is more and more adoption of the technology as such, regardless of what happens with the cryptocurrency aspect.
Yes, absolutely. There is a lot happening in this space, and I think eventually RBI will have to do this, because there was an article yesterday by World Economic Forum, IMF. Everybody is saying that this is becoming more and more imminent. Everybody seems to be moving in the direction of implementing blockchain technology.
Yeah, next question, please. Yeah, from Satish. It is possible to apply fintech to initiate a small to medium scale business model?
Absolutely. That was exactly, I'll give a slightly elaborate answer to this.
Yeah.
There are various ways that you can bring about development, and one of the, since 1992, the primary method of development was not to give a government job. The method of development was to promote entrepreneurship among underprivileged, and that this basically launching small to medium businesses and launching more of them is the engine of growth for any economy, and it would indeed be so for the Indian economy as well. And and fintech is especially an area where small to medium scale businesses can survive. But as I was explaining in that API, app and API case, you have to land and expand. You have that finding a sustainable business model. You have not used the word sustainable in your question. Finding a sustainable business model is the bigger challenge. So finding a niche, even if you find a niche, you have to keep innovating, otherwise you will lose that niche, because somebody else might displace you, or you have to find some multiple niches so that it becomes sustainable. And so that's the challenge.
Yeah, Sumit Durga, how much initial investment in one should need for the fintech startup?
Okay, yeah, this is a very good question. See, fintech startup, the classic fintech startup means an app leveraging an API. Now, when you talk about an app leveraging an API, then you are basically talking a cloud-based component Now, cloud technology is not it's a rent technology. So you don't have capital expenditure. You have OPEX. Don't have CAPEX. You have OPEX. And so if you build your component using cloud technology and you are leveraging, using an API provided by the traditional financial institution, there is very little CAPEX, and lot more OPEX. So, and you can scale basically as the business develops. So the amount of initial investment will typically be very low, and very, very low. It would be the least, it would be the least among any business proposition that you explore, particularly in agency business propositions. If you go for an agency business proposition, means becoming a broker, DSA, etc., and based on that, and you develop this kind of proposition around that, then that's the thing. And you add value to the agency business proposition. Comes in various shapes and sizes. DSA is one version of an agency business proposition, but you can always take a product, you can add value on that product and resell that product. That is also an agency business proposition in my mind. So that is where, so you have to think hard about products and services and do that.
Yeah, in 2005, mobile phone was new and was not available to the general public. As a few only can manage to go ahead with it, and now it's scrapped. Likewise, blockchain or Cypher will take how much time as per you for the general public?
See, now I think that's a Gaurav question more. I mean, because in my mind, blockchain technology will vanish from public visibility, and it will become increasingly. We don't talk about when you talk to people, you talk about business propositions, and you don't talk much. The technology will do it, and it will get done. And what is the business value? That's what you focus on. So I think increasingly the consumer will become less aware of it, and they will come to expect the main proposition of blockchain is what I see is what you see. That is the main proposition of blockchain, and consumers will start insisting that I want what I see is what you see. I should be able to. If you can guarantee that, that's what it will become. And people will not talk about the blockchain technology, at least. That's my view. And about crypto, in various forms, I think it will become very prevalent and become the norm rather than being an exception. But how much time? That depends on various factors, and I wouldn't hazard a guess. It is likely that it could happen as early as 5 years. It could take 15 years as well. Gaurav, I would like your view also.
Yes, thank you, sir. And the question is very crucial because when it comes to emerging technology, the right timing is extremely important. For example, Amazon began an online e-commerce store, but before that, in 1996, 1997, there were many online e-commerce stores that began, but they simply vanished because the adoption of internet was itself missing. So how did the adoption of internet increase? It happened with one key element, which was emails. So emails had to exist for 15 years. They had to become commonplace. And then exactly like Pratap sir said, internet seeped into our lives without anyone of us even knowing. With blockchain, thankfully, that work of seeping into and normalization is being done with Bitcoin, not cryptocurrencies, specifically Bitcoin. And in order to ensure that this moves away and becomes more commonplace, the technology itself has to become more user friendly, up to a level where, for example, you don't bother, right? You're using a smartphone right now, you don't bother at all how internet works, what is TCP/IP protocol. That's simply not your concern as a user. But for blockchain to attain that level of maturity and user friendliness, we will have to wait a few years for widespread adoption. But again, if you are investing early, if you are investing your time, efforts, and capital early, the risk might always be worth the effort because you could be the first one to lead the revolution. So yeah.
Yeah, from Sandesh, which opportunities for the insurance sector in fintech technology in India?
Yeah, see, the insurance sector has opened up, but there are lots of challenges in insurance taking off in a big way in India. I was very hopeful when the insurance sector opened up that there would be. In fact, I seriously considered moving to India because that is one of my strongest areas, and I seriously considered moving back to India.
But you should do that.
Sorry.
You should do that. You should do that soon, I think.
I hope so. I hope so. So, so the thing is that whatever I've been hearing from company, from people, companies which have invested in Indian subsidiaries or joint ventures and so on. People are scaling back their investments and are not very happy with with the outcomes that they are achieving. In terms of um, uh, because claims sometimes claims which need to be paid are not paid, claims which should not be paid are paid because of rules, because of factors which do not really exist in the West. So that is really the challenge here. But what I can talk at length about is about what is the opportunity for technology in insurance in general, specifically in India. Even if you had a great technology platform, these other factors which come into play, I'm not sure whether they can be easily dealt with. But if so I would strongly recommend you to sell shovels in that gold rush rather than going for the gold. So don't go and try to sell technology which other people can use and they manage those other problems. But there is a lot of opportunity. For example, you can use drones to go and survey. You can use drones to go and survey disaster zones and estimate potential claims. That's one of the technology offerings, and there are lots of opportunities. And I have written 200 odd articles on LinkedIn, and a lot of them talk about such kind of applications of technology in insurance.
Yes, sir. Pratap sir and Gaurav, we are ending here a question and answer session. Definitely, this is a very, I think, last but not least. Okay, good luck program. Okay, fine. Email ID. Yeah, we'll share you definitely email ID. Definitely, this is the very providing very important information session and providing a very good booster session, I can say. Definitely, thank you once again, Pratap sir and Saurabh, and thank you all the answering the questions and being asked by the audience also. It was a good session. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, sir, both of you. And we are ending here this